Morning, everyone. Today we are looking at kind of the last little bit of solving angles. Nothing today is actually new. It's all stuff that you should be able to do, finding missing angles. Now, the tricky part and the stuff that is different about today is I'm just not telling you what you need to use. You need to look at a situation, look at a problem and say, okay, do I need sine, do I need cosine, do I need tangent? And you need to be able to write those equations. At the very last assessment that we'll be doing for all of this is I'm just going to give you a triangle with a couple of pieces of information and ask you all the sides and all the angles. So you need to be able to do that and figure out everything and be able to put everything together. But today is just angles and being able to write those equations. So let's do some problems. Looking at a right triangle. Like this one. Okay? We're looking for angles, and what that means is I'm going to have a couple of sides. So let's go with 13 and 17. And let's look for this angle right here. Okay? And this is why writing the equations is so important, and also recognizing the alternate, opposite, and adjacent sides is so important. If I may. So, Katoa, which is kind of what's carrying us through this whole chapter. Chapter implies a book. There isn't one. We're not really using one. But it's chapter-ish. Anyway, so Katoa, sine is opposite over the hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over the hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over the adjacent. This is my important angle. Okay? It's the angle that either I'm looking for, or if we were looking for sides, the angle that I know. In this case, it's the one that I'm looking for. So everything is relative to this angle. So we know this side, and we know this side. We don't want to deal with this at all, because we don't know what it is. Okay? So we're going to look at this side. Now, which of the three sides is that? Is this my opposite, my adjacent, or my hypotenuse? Well, relative to this angle, this is wow. That's wrong. That's so wrong. It's the opposite side. Now I need to find my eraser. That was embarrassing, but I'm not going to cut it out. Just going to let myself be embarrassed. That's my opposite side. Okay, so this is my opposite side, and this is my hypotenuse. Remember, this is not my adjacent side. This is my adjacent side. Okay, adjacent means next to. But the hypotenuse is always opposite that right angle or my longest side. Okay, so I've got my opposite and my hypotenuse. Which of these three, then, uses my opposite and my hypotenuse? Well, we're looking for an O and an H, so that's got to be sine. And you have to take your time with this. Do not just say, like cosine or something like that. Spend your time. I would write this down and have this available to you every single time you do one of these problems. And go through this process of what sides do I have, and therefore, which trig ratio do I need? It's sine of the angle, but we do not know the angle, so that will be sine of x, equals my opposite, which is 13, over my hypotenuse, which is 17. Remember, opposite over hypotenuse, adjacent over hypotenuse, opposite over adjacent. The first one always goes on top. Okay? So the sine of x equals 13 over 17, which means we need arcsine. So let me make that smaller. This is just our Google calculator that we've been using. Again, we need to make sure that we are in degrees. If we are not in degrees, the answers we get will be very wrong. In order to get arcsine, if we're looking here, we notice that I don't see an arcsine button. I see a sine button, but that's not what I'm looking for, so make sure you don't use that. We're looking for arcsine. That's shift S. Shift S is how we get that. 13 divided by 17. Again, we can't simplify that. If you could simplify it, though, you don't really need to. Arcsine of 13 over 17 is 49.88 for this. For x, 49.88. Now, I'm going to check my answer, and I don't have a great way to do that except find the other angle. Okay, so let me walk you through this one as well. So I found x. Now I want to find y. Now, I could just take 90 and subtract 49.88 and get 40.12, something like that, and write it in there. But then I haven't checked my answer. I've just assumed I'm right. Okay, so it's a really good idea to check your answer, because if I check my answer here and get 12, something's gone wrong. Okay, and you've got to check your answers. Don't just look at this and say, yeah, that's close enough, because you're going to get stuff wrong. Okay, so from this angle now, 13 isn't my opposite of this angle. This is my adjacent from y. Remember, the opposite and the adjacent flip when you flip what angle you're talking about. But the hypotenuse doesn't. The hypotenuse is always the hypotenuse. It's always across from the right angle, so that doesn't go anywhere. But we flipped what angles we're talking about, and that means what's opposite and what's adjacent flip as well. So I've got my adjacent and my hypotenuse. I need an A and an H. Where's the AH? Cosine. So cosine of that angle, in this case y, equals my adjacent over my hypotenuse. So it's still 13 over 17. Now remember to solve this because we're looking for an angle. In order to go backwards and get that y, we need arc cosine. Which again, there's no button for, so Shift C will give me that arc cosine. And 13 divided by 17. That's an error because nothing that I clicked actually went in for some reason. There we go. 13 divided by, whoops. No, nothing is right here. What's happening? 13 divided by, I'm going to fix and edit this. So we need to put in arc cosine, which is Shift C, 13 divided by 17. Oh, I know it's wrong, but I don't have number lock on. 40.12, which is exactly what we should have gotten. 40.12. Okay, so that's what we're doing today, is looking at problems. Now, this was both sine and cosine that we needed. That is not always going to be the case. The situation, the way that you solve problems for tangent are exactly the same. Just means that we have, different sides. Now, if you have the hypotenuse length, you will be using sine or cosine. If you have both of these legs, you're going to use tangent twice. You're just going to flip the values. Okay? So they are different problems. If you have the hypotenuse, sine or cosine. If you have your legs, tangent twice. Okay? So let's do a tangent problem just so you can re-jog your memory there. Let's go with 5 to 12. That's always a good time. It's always a good time. Like I said, this is going to be tangent. We're going to have x over here. We're going to have y over here. Let's find x first. Let's just write both equations, then we'll see if they work out first. For x, I've got my opposite and my adjacent, so I'm looking for OA because I don't have the hypotenuse, so that'll be tangent of my opposite, tangent x, equals 12 over 5. And then for y, now 5 is my opposite and 12 is my adjacent. So tangent of y is 5 over 12. And notice that these are flipped, 12 over 5 and 5 over 12. So if you write your two equations and realize that you have the exact same equations for two different angles, something's gone wrong. Or you're looking at an isosceles triangle, which you probably aren't. Okay? I don't think I'm going to be giving you any of those. So you should see this flip. Okay? Make sure that you get all the numbers in the right spot, because obviously if they're flipped, you're going to get the answers wrong, because x needs to be the measurement of x, not y. Okay? So let's jump into arctan on our calculators. Calculators. La, 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 da. That is the calculator song. I have spent my time in quarantine recording an album. It's probably going to go at least a plaid. 67.38 for x. and I don't think I could have written that any sloppier. 67.38 for x, and then for y, we are looking at, again, arctan of 5 over 12, 22.62, which, if you add those two together, you will get 90, so I feel pretty confident about both of those answers. Today, the goal was, let me make myself bigger again. The goal today is just kind of review, because, again, all of these skills you should have from last week. So I'm just going to let you jump into the homework and practice a bunch of these. I'm trying to think of a way that I could write a whole bunch of either both sine and tangent problems. I'm not coming up with many. So you're probably going to be using either tangent twice or sine and then cosine, or cosine then sine, depending on what you're looking for. Okay, so you're going to get a whole bunch of missing pieces today. I'm going to want you to find them for me, but not telling you which of the three you're going to use. If you need help, I'll be available, but it's all stuff that you should be able to do. Just make sure that you walk through the process. Look at what sides you have, the opposite, the adjacent, or the hypotenuse, and then using those sides, what equation do we need? Solve for it using our very fancy Google calculator and shift letter. Okay, I'm out. See you guys tomorrow. Oh, there will be an assessment on these things. This is the next assessment. So once you're done with the homework for today, get one of those. Schedule those.